Is it still important to listen to what the birds are telling us, or does it not matter so much in our modern world anymore? I mean, most of us don't have to pay attention to the sounds of the wild in order to let us know if we're safe. We don't, a lot of us don't have predators anymore in our area, and so maybe it doesn't really matter. I don't know. I kind of think it does. And so this morning we're going to explore how to listen to the landscape, how to listen to the birds, and hearing the different layers of sound that the landscape provides. And in particular, I find it's very helpful to connect first with the baseline sounds. So the sounds that are the most constant on our landscape. And what that helps us to do is to know when there's a change, when something is different. So an example is that this morning I was eating breakfast up in my upstairs and looking out the window. And I heard this sound, this alarm sound that was coming. I wasn't sure if it was an alarm just yet. I actually thought it was a different kind of a bird. And it was just consistent and constant and constant and constant. It was going and going and going. And then all of a sudden, out from the bushes, I saw this house cat walk out. And I thought, oh, right, of course. It was a squirrel alarm actually coming from deeper in the bushes. And one of the reasons it was so consistent is because if you consider how fast or slow a cat actually moves, they can stay in one place for a long time. So an animal that's threatened by a cat, like a squirrel can be, would be alarming in the same place where the cat might be sitting. And so, yeah, the landscape is always talking to us, always telling us what's happening out there. If things are at peace, at baseline, if everything's okay, or if there's something that we need to pay attention to. And maybe it's not something that's an immediate threat for us, but it might be for some other creature. I'm Kristi from Bird Mentor, where I help people connect more deeply with the birds in their area. This is the Mindful Bird Sit. Let's get started. All right, everyone, take a nice deep breath in and let it go. And one more time, take a nice deep breath in and let it go again. Work. So just notice yourself. Check in with your own body in this moment. Check in on your posture. Notice the sensations on your skin. Noticing your own breath. And if you can get that far to your own heart rate, your own heartbeat and your rhythm. Just noticing what it's like to be you this morning, as if you were a friend meeting you today. What would you encounter? And then just on that vein of gratitude, sending yourself some love. Whatever aspect of yourself needs a little extra TLC this morning. Maybe it's your heart, maybe it's a part of your body, maybe it's just feeling joy. You just want to feel grateful that you're here today on this earth. Nice work. And so now going to stretch our awareness to the outer world outside of our body. I want you just to take a look around, just noticing all the sights around you in this moment. Don't forget to look at the sky and the ground beneath our feet, and then everything in between. And then in this moment, try to find a point, something to look at, or not something to look at, but try to see where you can see the furthest. So you might have to look through some trees, maybe through some buildings. And if for some reason you really can't see far because of whatever might be blocking your view, go ahead and look at the sky and just see if you can look as far away as possible. What's the furthest you can see right now? And just let your eyes wander off in that direction. And usually we pick a point a little bit closer, but this time go ahead and find something off far, far away. Maybe it's a cloud, and I know it's going to move a little bit, or maybe it's a tree, a point on a tree, but go ahead and allow your eyes to focus on one point far off in the distance. And that'll be our focal point for our softened vision. So go ahead and slowly start to expand your vision as if they are ripples expanding in the landscape around you. Just start to notice what comes into view. What do you become aware of? And then see how far you can possibly stretch your vision right now on both sides, all sides, up and down, right to left. What are the edges of your vision? And just allow your eyes to get blurry and soft if that's what starts to happen. Nice work. And now, while you're staying in this softened vision, you can continue to keep your eyes glancing around if you'd like, or you can just stay looking at that one point. But keep coming back to owl eyes, come back to softened vision. We're going to now start to introduce our ears to the sounds around us. And we're going to begin today by finding our baseline sounds. So the sounds that are just those consistent sounds on the landscape, whatever they may be. So they might be the loudest sound, they might also be a quiet sound. So regardless of kind of the volume of the sound, I want you to find at least three. Well, let's just start only three. Let's go no more than three. It could just be one, might be two, but let's find three sounds that are the most consistent, in a sense, the baseline in this moment. So it might be a bird sound, it might also be a human-made sound, which is perfectly fine. Maybe it's an air conditioning unit, maybe it's a motor running somewhere. But what I want you to do when you find one of these consistent sounds is to introduce yourself to it, get to know it, become familiar with its location, the quality of it, and then in a sense put a pin on the map. So just pin it. So you're going to kind of log it in your memory of the location, and then go ahead and find another sound that's consistent. If you can find three, that's great. If not, just stick with that one. And I'll let you have a couple of minutes to do this right now. So the loudest baseline sounds are often the easiest to bring our attention to, but see if you can right now search the landscape for a really subtle, maybe quieter, softer sound, one though that is consistent, or at least relatively consistent. Beautiful. So now that you have these sounds pinned on the landscape around you, we're going to start to listen to the other layers of sound right now. So we'll begin first with a sound that's loud. So this doesn't have to be consistent, but just something that you're hearing on the landscape that's relatively loud, that's easy to hear. So we'll take a couple of minutes and just listen for the various sounds that are loud on the landscape. But every so often, what I'd like you to do is keep checking back in with your baseline sounds. Are they still active? Are they still continuing? And ideally, of course, like I said, it's okay to have a human-made sound. If you can find a wild sound that is continuous or consistent, like a baseline sound, that's awesome. All right. And just as we did with our baseline sounds, if you hear a sound, a louder sound, and you hear a few different sounds that are loud, go ahead and just sort of put a little pin in them on the landscape, just so you can acknowledge, oh yeah, there's this particular bird making a call, behind me. And oh, there's another one over there in front of me. And just, you don't have to know who they are, it's okay, but just sort of log the quality of the sound and where it's coming from. And we're sticking with the louder sounds at the moment. Okay, good work. So now, not that you have to forget the loud sounds, but we're going to go one layer quieter. So not the absolute quietest sound right now, but just something that's a little bit quieter than the sound that we just were bringing our attention to. And this may take a little bit of stretching of your ears to hear it. It might be a further away sound. It might be a close sound, but one that's just soft. So go ahead and listen for that mid-range sound right now. Go ahead and check back in with your baseline sounds, noticing if you still hear them. Are they still on the landscape? Okay, good work. And so now we're going to listen for the softest, quietest sound that you could possibly hear on the landscape. It might be your breath, but see if you can stretch yourself to listen for a whisper of a sound amidst everything else. Oftentimes, the quietest sound is the one that requires the most focus from us during a mindfulness practice. It's a really great teacher because if you can't hear the quiet sound, it's easy for our minds to wander. So, continuing to bring yourself back to searching for that quiet sound. And one other little trick I'll offer is that sometimes listening for a quiet sound can be challenging, but it can help to look for a visual cue. For instance, right now, I was just looking, my neighbor has a banana tree next door, and I could see that the leaves were moving in the wind, and I just wondered, could I hear the sound of the leaves touching each other as they were moving in the wind? And so having the visual stimulus as well as trying to stretch and listen for that audible sound um, can be helpful. And remembering to check back in with your baseline sounds while you're listening for your quiet sound. So let's take the next couple of minutes to just let yourself take it all in. You don't have to listen for any one sound in particular, but just allow yourself to absorb all of the sounds, the whole landscape as one. And you might even try this part with your eyes closed. Might give a slightly different perspective if you're not looking at something already. And one of the very last things we'll do, and this would be nice to do with your eyes closed, is just to notice if there's any emotion that's present while you're listening to your landscape this morning. So, not so much how you're feeling, but just feeling the landscape. Can you send your sensors out onto the landscape and notice if there's any emotion, any feeling that comes back to you from there? Good work. So take the next moment or two to offer a blessing or gratitude to those ones you interacted with this morning. Okay. So anyone who has to head out, thank you for coming. It was a pleasure to be in your presence this morning. And whoever wants to stay for our chat, you're welcome to do so. Would love to hear from folks about their experience this morning, whatever arose for you that you want to share. And a thought that was just present to me at the very end when I was doing my blessing and gratitude was just thinking about what kind of sound I want to be on the landscape, and thinking about ancient peoples and how often they sang, how much song there used to be out on the land. And the birds still do that, and other animals still communicate. Well, maybe not song necessarily from other animals, but the birds still sing in the way that they've done anciently for a long, long time. And yeah, so I'm just pondering that for myself right now. Like, what sound do I want to be on the land? So anyway, all right, who would like to share? Raise your hand when you want. Kevin, please.
Hi. Nice to see you, Kristi. I was waving goodbye.
Oh, oh, sorry. You gotta go. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. It was perfect. Perfect for me.
Oh, good. So glad to have you again. All right, Cheryl, please, and then Julia, and then Della.
I decided to move outside. It isn't as cold as it appeared to be. And the sounds were much clearer out here, and the feeling that I got transmitted back to me was, well, it's another day, it's another busy day. All the birds are just sounding very, very busy, and um, the vehicles on the road near me are zooming up and down. So I know that it must be Monday. It's a totally different sound than the weekend sounds are. And it was, and it's good because now I feel energized to go out and go look at some birds
Yeah.
that are not in my yard.
Oh, yay! And be a part of it all.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you did that. That's awesome, Cheryl. Thank you. Yeah, it is. It is. I'm sure all of you, because you do this work, you've tracked it. But the difference in sound from a Monday versus even like a Wednesday versus a Saturday or a Sunday and then a holiday, like all those different, we can almost tell what kind of a day of the week it is by if we live near traffic, if we live near other humans, we can typically tell based on, you get to know the vibe of the days of the week. I think the only time it was drastically different was during COVID, when things were just so quiet. It's almost like you didn't know what day of the week it was because there wasn't the typical traffic sounds and human sounds. And it was just sort of, we got to get back in the rhythm of the natural sounds. And like Monday doesn't mean the same thing anymore. Yeah, yeah. Interesting, Cheryl. Thank you. Thanks so much. Julia, go for it.
Well, a couple of things, and this I noticed earlier this morning because someone had come by and was saying how beautiful the yard work looks and all, but the temperature is glorious. It's just in low 70s. It's just, have a little shirt on. And it seems that the plants are not stressed from the hot sun. So they're happier. But also I thought it might be, the feeling on my skin being much more pleasant might change the way I see the plants. But they are particularly brilliant in color, and the hummingbirds are coming and all. And then as we were thinking through the different sounds, and I had the same thing, noticing the traffic compared to last Monday when it was a holiday, you know. But I'm just curious about our brains. I know that we've evolved not to pay attention to every stimulus that comes in. We couldn't. And how our brain sorts out things that are important for us to notice and other things that are not important for us to notice. And it's not that I don't hear these sounds that we were listening for today, all of them. And the planes are going overhead today because of the airstream being a certain way. They don't do that every day, but we're on the flight path some days. And where that must all of these different stimuli must be going in and being sorted as not important to pay attention to. Or what was that sound? What, you know, I have my students come in to the backyard and come in a back. They come through the garden and then to the door. And there's a squeaky hinge. And I I had a neighbor offer to oil that hinge for me. I said, no, 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 that's my doorbell. So that I know if someone is coming through the gate. And I'm usually buried, my head's down in the flower bed or something. I don't see them coming, but I know that somebody's come through. Well, that's something that my brain is alert to, and I actually hear. But so many of these sounds, my little streams, and then the traffic in the distance, and I had the loud one, the airplane went over, and lower, a hummingbird came up, and I thought that that's the one bird I don't think of their voice as being characteristic of their sound so much as the sound of their wings. And I don't even have to see them if my head's buried in the garden. I know if there's one there. They don't care if you're in there. So anyway, I'm just curious about where all these sounds are going into my brain and getting sorted out just based on survival.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good conversation, I think, that you bring up, because one reason I feel like it's so important to do this work right now, to do these bird sits, is to bring, to remind our brains that it's important to listen to the birds and nature, because it's easy for us to not prioritize that, not have our brains prioritize these sounds in the modern world, because we don't really need to listen to them anymore. You know, we don't need to know if there's a mountain lion around the corner, because there's not many of them, unless you live in California or other places where, it really is important to listen to those kinds of things, or if you live in Africa, for instance. But in our modern world, we've sort of gotten rid of a lot of the threats to ourselves, and there are sounds, of course, that mean something to us, like the squeaky hinge or a police siren, for instance. Those all mean something. This morning, actually, I was like startled awake because about every 2 weeks there's this vehicle that goes by spraying for mosquitoes, and I often have my windows open, and I don't want to have the spray come in while I'm sleeping. And so I was like, and if it makes a loud sound, you can hear the spray, you can hear, like, you can sort of see the lights, but it's the sound that this vehicle makes as it's coming by. It just has this particular sound, and I, like, 2 in the morning, I was like, it's here. And so, like, I ran and shut my windows. And but yeah, there's like, we have these I guess you could call them predatory sounds. It's like that thing that's an alarm that causes us to pay attention in our modern world. But then there's the softer ones, those quieter ones, like that squirrel alarm, for instance, that was telling me this morning that there was a cat nearby. And it's most people in our modern world don't hear that. They don't hear the squirrel. They don't hear the birds talking. They don't hear them anymore. And so it is really important to just keep, I think, to keep those in the forefront of our mind, to tell ourselves that it is still important to listen to those sounds, not just because for our survival's sake, but for all sorts of other reasons too. And I think it's really just important conversation that you bring up there, Julia. Yeah, yeah, thank you. Della, you were next.
Um, well, it's totally sucked in here this morning. Foggy, and I can't see very far. And looking at the sky, it's just all gray right now. And for sounds, everything was so quiet, and the only bird that I really heard were hummingbirds. And I was wondering if there's something about hummingbirds that they come out regardless of the fog, and Paul, all the other birds seem to be quiet this morning. And I also noticed how loud I am. It seemed like that the loudest thing I could hear was myself breathing or moving or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's a cool thing to think about. Why? So I suppose what came to mind, well, actually, I'll put it out to everybody else. Like, why do folks think that the hummingbirds would be out on a sucked in day when we might not be, or Della might not be as attentive, not you're not attentive, as that you're not hearing as much from the other birds. What do folks think? Yeah, Cheryl, what do you
Oh,
think?
I think it's because they're so small, they have to be eating constantly in order to be able to even fly.
That could be one reason. That's a possibility.
They flip their wings like crazy.
They do. They do. Yep. Yep. But it's not that other birds don't exert energy and don't need to eat also. So why what else might I think you're on the track at least that I'm thinking of. But there could be other tracks. Anyone else have a thought? Why do you think the hummingbirds would be out on a socked in day and visible or audible and not so much the other birds? Well, think for a second. It was Cheryl was kind of on this train of thought. She was talking about them needing to eat. So hummingbirds eat compared to what other birds are eating,
The flowers.
right? So yeah, go ahead, Cheryl.
Okay, I'm thinking, okay, I have a lot of those little salvias that have little pockets where moisture could go, and perhaps the moisture goes in and it raises or enhances the my mind's a blank what it is that they sip, but what they drink out of the plants, the
That's
nectar.
interesting. Yeah, I don't know if birds' sensory organs are the same. I know with dogs, for instance, one reason that they have a moist nose, or wolves, is because it actually helps them to smell better. I mean, one thing that my teacher John Young used to have us do was sort of like lick our finger and like wet our nose to and then smell, because it actually enhances your sense of smell by having some moisture there at the end of your nose, like with the dogs. And it's not massive, but it's a little bit, for us. And that's interesting, that I wonder what moisture does to the sense. But also, what you just mentioned is that they are nectar eaters, right? Whereas other birds might be insect eaters, and maybe the insects aren't as prevalent on a socked-in day, and so there's just not as much food available for birds who are eating nectar. I know, of course, some birds are seed eaters and whatnot, but it's just an interesting thought. I wonder if yeah, maybe there's something about the nectar versus the insects. But that's a good one to ponder, Della.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. And let's see. Anne, did you have something? I wasn't sure if I saw your hand earlier or just, okay. Did anyone else want to share this morning their experience? Whatever arose for you while you were sitting, pondering? All right, yeah, these are some great conversations and concepts to consider as we go through our week. So thank you, everybody, for bringing yourselves today to this practice and the conversation. Just always so interesting to hear what comes up for you. Yeah, thank you, Gabrielle. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next week. Yeah. All right,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank
Happy
you, and happy
birthday,
after
Kristi.
birthday.
Happy birthday.
You're awesome.